Let's talk about Nagaland. There are so many issues, many of which are decade-old, unresolved issues. Out of many, the one main issue is drug abuse in the state. And it also aligns with some of the other problems that comes. It's like a chain that follows. You study hard, dream big, but sometimes the biggest hurdle is not exams, it's finding a job. And in Nagaland, for many young people, that waiting game has a darker side. Unemployment and addiction, two words no young person wants in the same sentence, but in Nagaland, they are becoming uneasy companions for far too many people. The youth here have energy, talent, and ambition, but when the state's jobs are scarce and opportunities few, even the brightest dreams sometimes look for an escape route. Thousands of young Nagas are sitting on with degrees, their dreams, and a lot of free time. And when opportunity does not knock, sometimes trouble slips quietly through the window. Despite Nagaland's young population and relatively high literacy, the state continues to struggle with two interlinked social challenges: youth unemployment and drug abuse. Official surveys show that tens of thousands of young people are registered as unemployed, actively seeking work but finding few opportunities in the labor market. A reality that breeds frustration and frustration's darker cousins. In parallel, law enforcement and government estimates put the number of drug users in the state at over 1.2 lakh, with a majority addicted to strong opioids like heroin and locally called sunflower drugs, and a significant share under the age of 30. Nagaland's youth are facing a tough reality where tens of thousands are actively seeking work, but opportunities are scarce, as I've mentioned before, leaving many with little to do and even less hope. And at the same time, drug abuse is on the rise. It's safe to say that this somewhat comes down to the geographical state, the state's geography, bordering regions near the Golden Triangle makes it both a transit and consumption hub for narcotics. Nagaland's geography and socio-economic framework adds layers to this problem. Bordering regions near Myanmar Golden Triangle makes it a transit and consumption hub for trafficked narcotics, while limited former employment channels mean ideal hours and also ideal hopes too often become gateways to substance use. The connection between joblessness and drug abuse isn't mere conjecture. Studies from the region have long shown that unemployment is disproportionate high among those dependent on drugs, especially heroin, with many never having held regular work. On the human cost side, there is no comprehensive official count of drug overdose deaths specific to Nagaland in recent years. Though national crime data indicates that drug overdose kills an average of nearly 12 people every week across India, underscoring how lethal the crisis has become nationally. States neighboring Nagaland also record dozens of deaths related to narcotics each year, highlighting the severe public health dimensions of the problem in the Northeast. Experts and community leaders describe the situation as a slow-burning socio-economic fire, which means when good jobs are scarce and aspirations high, despair can find other outlets, sometimes in substances that promise temporary escape. At the same time, the sheer scale of drug availability, from easy border access to synthetic supplies, makes prevention and rehabilitation a complex puzzle that law enforcement alone cannot solve. The battle, they say, requires a job creation, or even community support, strong rehabilitation, and a cultural shift that connects youth with meaningful opportunities. Nagaland geography and socio-economic framework add layers to these problems as well. As I've mentioned before, that bordering regions near Myanmar's Golden Triangle make it a transit and consumption hub for trafficked narcotics, while limited formal employment channels mean idle hours and idle hopes becoming gateways to substance abuse. When we talk about drugs, with many never having held regular work, but it's not an unknown factor that there is no comprehensive official count of drug overdose deaths specific to Nagaland in recent years, but we always hear news of someone or the other, whether it's in the family or people we know or even in the community, who is related or linked to drug abuse. On the other hand, highlighting the severe public health dimensions of the problem in the notice, experts and community leaders describe the situation as a slow-burning socio-economic fire. At the same time, the sheer scale of drug availability, from easy border access to synthetic supplies, makes prevention a rehabilitation and a complex puzzle that law enforcement alone cannot solve. The battle, they say, requires job creation, community support, and also reconnecting youth with meaningful opportunities. But when we talk about or when we link unemployment with drug abuse, let's not be confused or misdirected, because drug abuse with unemployment, that is definitely not the core reason. Unemployment is not necessarily the main cause of drug abuse. It's more like a risk factor or a situation that can exacerbate vulnerability. Many other social, psychological, and environmental factors play a role, and even family issues, peer influence, easy access to drugs, mental health challenges, and the reason goes on. Unemployment and lack of opportunities can increase vulnerability to substance abuse among youth, but drug dependence arises from a complex mix of social, psychological, and environmental factors. Jobs alone do not keep drugs away, it's true. But idle time and limited opportunities can make youth more and more sensitive when it comes to this. In sociology, psychology, and public health, there are several terms used to describe how unemployment or lack of opportunities can sometimes increase the risk of substance abuse among youth. The ideal youth phenomenon refers to young people with significant free time and no structured activity, which can occasionally lead to risky behaviors, including drug use. Not forgetting that occupational stress or role strain highlights how individuals who cannot fulfill expected social or economic roles, such as having a job, may also turn to maladaptive coping mechanisms. The economic desperation or socio-economic strain theory from criminology and sociology explains how blocked access to legitimate opportunities like jobs or social mobility can also push some individuals toward deviant behaviors, including substance use. From a public health perspective, substance abuse as a coping mechanism for unemployment emphasizes that stress, hopelessness, or even social isolation may lead some youth to seek relief in drugs. Finally, the concept of youth vulnerability syndrome is sometimes used in research to describe young people who are more vulnerable to addiction, risky behavior, or crime due to unemployment, marginalization, or lack of supportive opportunities. Wrapping up on this topic of discussion, one thing is that Nagaland faces a multifaceted challenge where youth unemployment and substance abuse intersect, creating a complex social and public health concerns. Addressing this issue requires more than law enforcement. It calls for coordinated efforts in job creation, skill development, community engagement, and accessible rehabilitation services. And also, not forgetting one of the main factors where being more sensitive towards people's mental health, and especially people who use drugs, being more sensitive towards their mental health. and not stigmatizing. Because one thing is so common among the people, when there is a drug abuser, there is a huge stigma. And people need to avoid that. People need to be more educated on how to deal with drug abuse or drug abusers. By strengthening support system and expanding meaningful opportunities for its young population, Nagaland can work towards mitigating both the economic and social vulnerabilities that place its youth at risk, ensuring that potential is nurtured rather than lost.